Good morning, everyone. I am Councilmember Byron Amos, Chair of the Atlanta City Council Transportation Committee. I'd like to officially call the Transportation Committee to order Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. Joined by my colleagues to my far left, where he was down there, Councilmember Juan, have Councilmember Hillis, and Councilmember Dozer. To my immediate right is our Vice Chair, Councilwoman Collier Overstreet, Councilman Lewis, and then Councilmember Faroki as well. I make a motion to adopt the agenda. Motion has been made and second. Please open the vote.
One moment. Mr. Chair, can you repeat the mover and the seconder, please?
I was the mover. Councilmember Lewis was the seconder.
Hold on.
Make sure it's plugged.
Yeah, it's plugged in. The vote is open. The vote is closed. Excuse me, sorry.
Make a motion.
The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The agenda has been adopted.
Thank you. I move we approve the agenda. Motion has been made and second. Second by Councilmember Juan. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The minutes have been approved.
Thank you. That takes us to our 2025 Transportation Committee goals and objectives. We have actually extended that deadline to February 7th. So please, colleagues, if we have any comments, concerns, please get them to myself or our analyst, Mr. Johnson, so we can try to get those approved on the 7th. That takes us to our public comment. Everyone will have 3 minutes to speak. I remind everyone, please keep your comments directed toward the committee. Please be respectful as possible. So first on our list is Sue Ross.
Good morning, Chair Amos, and to Council members Faroki, Lewis, Marcy Overstreet, Jason Dozier, Dustin Hillis, and Alex Juan. I'm glad to see you again, and I'm here on behalf of the Shirley Franklin Commission. I'm one of 16 members of the commission, and we worked for a good part of last year, holding public hearings and getting comments. We had an online portal on the city website, and we got a tremendous amount of input from the public about what are the appropriate ways to honor the Honorable Shirley Franklin, the 58th mayor of the city of Atlanta. And the two top things that came up were renaming West Side Park for Mayor Franklin and also renaming Central Avenue. And it's appropriate because it travels alongside of City Hall, which is the building in which she spent a great deal of time in city government, working for mayors Maynard Jackson and Andrew Young, and then her 2 terms as mayors. And of course, she served for the city on the Olympics. She continues to, she served with the National Center for Civil and Human Rights, and she continues to serve the young people of our city. As many of you know, while she was mayor, she started a program to pretty much enable any and a public school student that wanted to go on to higher education to get some money to do that. And she continues to do that to this day. I mean, even last year, she took busloads of APS students to various colleges around the Southeast. And she continues to serve in many ways on the political front, the cultural front, and importantly, the youth and education front. So we would like to urge you to move the legislation forward. It has gone through the committee process, and it's gone to the NPUs for comment. And it is now time to move it to full council for approval so that we can appropriately honor former Mayor Shirley Franklin. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next on the list is Mr. Kennedy.
Good morning, Chair Amos and my distinguished members of the Atlanta City Council on the Transportation Committee. I, along with my colleague Sue Ross and several representatives from communities across the Atlanta, had the distinguished honor of representing this body and the people of Atlanta in coming up with recommendations that were appropriate to honor our 58th mayor. The easiest thing that I can say, Chair Amos, is ditto what Sue Ross said. But, you know, I think there was a lot of, what I want to stress is there was a lot of intentionality to ensure that we really heard from the people in every corridor of this city, because that's obviously, you know, the mayor's role is to represent all people of Atlanta. And so we wanted to make sure that every voice was heard. And as my colleague Sue Ross stated, that the two things that came forward resoundingly were the renaming of the West Side Park and renaming of Central Avenue to Shirley Clark Franklin Boulevard. And so we ask that you do move that forward to full council. As we, you know, it was probably the most challenging, but the easiest thing to do, you know, to really make sure that you're getting full public input. But at the same time, those two items were voted so highly that it kind of made it like, okay, well, our role is to be the liaison between the city and the people have spoken, if you will. So we look forward to your full support of the recommendations that were made through this commission via the recommendation and voting that was made through our outreach, to then move it forward to full council on Monday, as we look forward to honoring this distinguished human being that gave and continues to give so much to not only the city, but to, you know, to our communities and so many places across this country, always highlighting, you know, the civic responsibility and the civic legacy of Atlanta's. And, you know, I just think it's so appropriate to give folks their flowers while they're with us and not after they're moved on. So we thank you for your support, and we look forward to joining you on full council on Monday, and then ultimately putting together a celebration that is appropriate to recognize and honor former Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir. Next on the list, I believe this is Spencer Jones, but either way, it was time was given to Dr. Robinson. So, Dr. Robinson, you have 6 minutes.
Greeting, board. Happy New Year. This is my first time at transportation this year. I come down here in peace today, but y'all speaking about this Shirley Franklin and West Side Park, I'm not gonna speak on that today because, like I said, I come in peace. But and I respect Miss Sue Ross, so I don't want us to be on opposite side today on this. But I reflect as I spent my 2 weeks in Ghana. I had time to reflect, and before I left, I had a meeting with the airport. And Chair Amos, you first tried to sit everyone down before things got out of hand about 2 years ago. And oftentimes when I come down here because people do need a voice. And in that voice, oftentimes when I'm the speaker, I may get too emotional and say things that sometimes may go overboard. So today I come down here and asking Mr. Michael Smith, would he come up here, because I want to apologize to him on camera, because in speaking out against him, I called him a devil. And in that, I never want to call a black man of his age a devil, because they have gone through so many things in this country, being called black, a nigger, and different things, and I don't want to be a black man calling another black man a devil. So if you would, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You don't mind? Yeah.
I think that's good enough, right there.
Okay.
Right.
And also speaking with our general manager, Ms. Jan Lennon, she expressed that her office is a open invitation for conversation. as opposed to us coming to this microphone without talking to them first, which initiated by Miss Anita Williams has also been that conduit and that go-between to have these conversations. And also speaking with the new director and the director of training of maintenance at the airport have also expressed their open door policy to have conversations to come down here about these things. And I just want to say, though I still believe in strong advocacy, we must have these conversations beforehand, before we come down here, because I think we can remedy a lot of these situations if we come here. I mean, we don't come here first, we talk to the appropriate people. So I just wanted to come down here today and give you that apology, Mr. Smith, because it did bother me while I was away. And one thing that I would like to say is that, man, when you travel abroad, you appreciate home so much more. Even though things are cheaper, this U.S. dollar stretch a long way. But government and that's being able to call some people, even if you might not get that yes that you want, still the notion of knowing that I can call Mr. Faroki, Mr. Lewis, Ms. Overstreet, Mr. Amos, Mr. Dozier, Mr. Hillis, Mr. Warren, to have that notion that you can get to someone and you know somebody, man, that means so much. And I think we take that for granted. Nobody gets it right. No government gets it right. But I do believe, and as much as I speak out, I do believe that we are farther ahead than most countries and most cities in Atlanta. Even though we have, you know what I'm saying, a hill to climb, but we are still, I think, first in class and better in a lot of ways. And I have often spoke out with the articles about the airport and the customer service. Man, but we are so much better than a lot of airports and a lot of countries with that. You know what I'm saying? Yes, we have improvement. Yes, we can make it. Everyone can, right? And I just want to just say that, man, because oftentimes I've come down here and I lay the hammer down. But in my moment of reflection in the new year, I just want to just say that I do look forward to working with each and every one of y'all when a problem arises, because that's what adults do. And I couldn't wait to come out here to apologize to you, Mr. Smith, in the airport. So I do apologize, and thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to the end of the sign-in sheet that I have. So that takes us to our regular agenda. G, ordinance for second reading. Mr. Johnson.
Item number 125-01016, an ordinance by Transportation Committee authorizing the City of Atlanta to waive the competitive procurement source selection provisions contained in Section 2-1187 of Article 10 Procurement and Real Estate Code of the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances, as well as any other conflicting code provisions on behalf of the Department of Aviation to ratify services rendered to agreement listed herein, ATL history of the Atlanta Airport with Gary Lee Super Design Associates beginning February 1st, 2025, and to execute amendment number 2 to extend the term of the agreement on a month-to-month basis for a term up to 10 months, effective February 1st, 2025 through December 1st, 2025, and for other purposes.
Motion to approve. Second. Motion has been made and second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable. Item number 2, 25-01043, an ordinance by Councilmember Andrea L. Boone authorizing the mayor's designee on behalf of the City of Atlanta to execute a right-of-way deed to the Georgia Department of Transportation to dedicate a sidewalk consisting of approximately 0.034 acres of land over a portion of city-owned property located at 2175 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia, tax parcel ID identification number listed herein to be made part of GDOT's right-of-way along Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, State Route 139, waiving any conflicting provisions of Article 10, Division 4, Subdivision 3 of the Atlanta City Code of Ordinances and for other purposes. Mr. Chair, this item will need to be amended. The amendment attaches Exhibit A, which is the property description, and Exhibit B, which is the location map.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded. Please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is open. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The item is amended.
Motion to approve the amended item. Motion has been made and second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable as amended.
Takes us to our resolutions.
Item number 325R3080, a resolution by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet requesting the mayor or his designee to install traffic calming devices on the eastern side of Tell Road Southwest near the intersection of Tell Place Southwest and the western side of Tell Road Southwest near the intersection of River Pine Trail Southwest in order to reduce speeding and for other purposes. Mr. Chair, this item will need to be amended. The amendment makes minor revisions in the third and fourth whereas clauses.
Second. Motion has been made and second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is amended.
Second. Motion has been made and second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable as amended. Item number 4, 25R3117, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor as designee to apply for grant funding from the U.S. Department of Transportation, from the U.S. Department of Transportation Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity Grant, an amount not to exceed $2 million and 0 cents on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation for the Centennial Yards Complete Streets Project and for other purposes. Mr. Chair, the department requests that this item be filed.
Motion has been made and second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is filed in committee. Item number 5, 25R3118, a resolution by Transportation Committee authorizing the mayor as designee to execute agreement listed herein share micromobility data management services with Via Nova LLC on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation for a term of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options, an amount not to exceed $60,000 and 0 cents. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund department, organization, and account number listed herein and for other purposes.
Motion to approve. Motion has been made and second. Please open the vote.
One moment. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
That takes us out of our resolutions to our dual referred. We have one that I would like to actually hold last because we have 2 papers coming off Hale that Mr. Johnson and committee members, if we could jump to, I think the first one is number 18.
Yes, this takes us to our papers in the Hell Committee. Item number 18 on page 7, 24-01617. An ordinance by Council Members Jason Dozier, Andrea L. Boone, Marcia Collier Overstreet, Matt Westmoreland, Dustin Hillis, Byron D. Amos, Amir Faroki, Jason Winston, Mary Norwood, Alex Wan, Howard Shook, and Antonio Lewis as amendment number 2 by Transportation Committee to rename Central Avenue Southwest, starting from Decatur Street Southeast to Pryor Street Southwest to Shirley Clark Franklin Boulevard to waive certain provisions of the City Atlanta Code of Ordinances and for other purposes.
Councilmember Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say thank you to the committee once again for all y'all's hard work and coming up with these recommendations. I've talked with a lot of community members about this particular renaming, and there's a lot of excitement. There's some questions and some thoughts, and we're going to try to do what we can to work with ATL DOT and maybe work with Office of Cultural Affairs to ensure that we can maximize that celebration of Mayor Franklin as we do the renaming as well. So potential art installations, some trying to advance streets, some of the funding we already have to make that corridor the most beautiful corridor in the city of Atlanta through our Safe Streets for All grant that we got from the federal government a few years ago. But I just want to say just kudos to you all for the hard work. Kudos to my colleagues for working as a collectively as a body to get this advance forward, and I'm excited to make this motion to approve.
There's a motion on the floor.
Second.
Councilwoman Kari Overstreet was second. So back into conversation. Councilwoman Overstreet.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in too, because I was a member of the commission, and I am very proud to have worked alongside some of Atlanta's major leaders in honoring someone that people, I don't think people understand the depth of her dossier. Shirley Clark Franklin was indeed our mayor, but there's so much that has happened around the city of Atlanta, but for her. And it just is a proud moment for us as a city. We don't have enough female named streets in the city of Atlanta. We have quite a few warriors and trendsetters and people that paved the way, like Shirley Clark Franklin. Not to that degree, but quite a bit. And I would say that this is monumental for us as a city. We are at a place where in society, in the American history, where being a woman is not something that is cherished, in that they're trying to strip away Women's History Month, and DEI is a bad thing. We're not supposed to have legislation before us that would be inclusive of those that are minority participants, and that's women or people of color or people that are not the same. And I think that as a city, this is a great time, and we've done yeoman's work in our engagement. And I want to do this quote that I often look at, it's from Shirley Franklin. It says, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." Those are her words. And that is what she stands for. So when you say, "Let my work speak for me," she didn't want all of this. Like, she doesn't. She didn't want to have a hand in it. She didn't want to talk about it. She definitely didn't want a statue or anything like that. And so we did it anyway. And I'm so glad that we did. So I am the second for this legislation. And I want to thank, I saw Creed, there are quite a few commission members. Look like we're dispersing, but you know, thank you all so much for allowing me to be a part of this history. I'm so excited. I don't know if you all remember when we had our public meeting, when Ambassador Young said that one of his most proudest accomplishments is seeing his name on the boulevard, on the expressway. And I am so proud that we will actually be able to see that for her as well. So thank you, and that is it. I yield.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis.
It's hard to come after that, and I won't try to. What I will say, to hear Ms. Sue Ross speak a little bit earlier today, and to hear the quote of the best way to create the future is to predict the future, is create the future. I am this year talking about securing Atlanta's future, but in 2005, it was the year that she created the Next Step program, and she allowed me to be the person who followed her for an entire summer. And so I wouldn't be who I am today had I not been the only intern in Mayor Franklin's office. Had I not challenged her when she came to South Atlanta High School and sat on stage and I say, "Hey, I want to work like you. I want to do what you do." And her to take me with her and to go to a college, and her help me pay for my scholarship to go there. And when they say the Next Step program, we say Year of the Youth, and we focus on youth in the city of Atlanta, you have to know what they did. They helped every single graduating student from the city of Atlanta with their next step. no matter what it was, right? So if you wanted a job, if you wanted to go to college, they gave every single student in the city of Atlanta a laptop. And so when you think about what I'm doing right now as a city council person in District 12, in which I go to the high schools, and if you graduate, I give you a laptop. And we're trying to fight for you to get a job. It's me being what I needed because I had somebody to be in that gap. And so thank you, Mayor Franklin. This legislation is overdue. Blessed to be a city council person when this happened. Happy to have my name on this paper. And so thank you again and to the sponsors, and thank you again to the people that put this forward.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor that has been made in second. Please open the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. This item is favorable.
Thank you. That takes us to the next item to come off held is item number 21, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item number 21, 25R3004, a resolution by Councilmember Dustin Hillis authorizing the mayor as designee to execute a project management agreement with Westside Howell Mill Community Improvement District, doing business as Upper West Side Improvement District, for the Chattahoochee Avenue project on behalf of the Atlanta Department of Transportation in an amount not to exceed $3,920,599.00. All contracted work will be charged to and paid from the fund, department, organization, and account number listed herein and for other purposes.
Motion, our second motion is made by Councilmember Hillis, second by myself to approve.
The vote is open. The vote is closed. 7 yeas, 0 nays. The item is favorable.
Thank you. That brings us back to deferred items. Item number 6.
Item number 6, 25C0005, a communication from Daniel Hampton, Chair, Audit Committee, submitting the Performance Audit Report, Moving Atlanta Forward 2024 Annual Review.
Afternoon, or good morning, actually. Good morning. I'm Ijik Jones, here to present the results of our 2024 annual review of the Moving Atlanta Forward infrastructure program. The audit team for this project included Michaela James and Christopher Shuffleton as auditors and myself as the audit supervisor. We conducted this audit as required by Ordinance 22-01369, requiring the city auditor to conduct an annual review of project financials and delivery for the Moving Atlanta Forward program. This is our second audit of the program, and we released our first audit in December 2023, which primarily focused on the project delivery framework. Our objectives were to assess the status of our previous recommendations, as well as assess whether controls were in place to manage budget, scope, and schedule requirements, and whether the project has progressed equitably across city council districts. This slide shows Exhibit 5 on page 7 of the report. City Council adopted a strategic delivery plan for the program to function as a guide for increased oversight, accountability, resident participation, and a commitment to improved project delivery. The plan establishes a project management framework and includes monitoring and control measures to ensure projects comply with schedule, budget, and scope. The plan also includes a five-phase life cycle with necessary steps for completion in each phase. The first 2 phases, activation and pre-construction, were renamed to planning and scoping and engineering and design, respectively. Exhibits 1 and 2 on page 2 of the report show the funding breakdown of the program. The ordinance authorized a $750 million program funded in part by T-SPLOST for transportation capital projects and 2 general obligation bonds approved by voters for about $400 million, funding parks, trails, and transportation projects, as well as public safety and parks facilities. The bonds also included $36 million in council discretionary funds, allowing the council member to direct $3 million to projects in their district. The program is administered through the mayor's office, but the Departments of Transportation, Enterprise Asset Management, and Parks and Recreation directly oversee the projects. This slide summarizes our findings. Half of the projects that have started are still in the planning and scoping phase. If funding remains unallocated, the scope of future projects may be impacted, and the strategic delivery plan controls are not implemented consistently across the departments. Improvements to the program dashboard are needed to increase usefulness to stakeholders. As of August 2024, all Batch 1 projects and the majority of Batch 2 projects have started. The strategic delivery plan has 202 projects, each scheduled to begin in different calendar years. And these batches were divided by criteria such as needs assessments, shovel readiness, and funding availability. This slide shows Exhibit 7 from page 14 of the report. Of the 202 projects planned, 134 have begun as of August 2024, including all projects in Batch 1 and all but 16 of the Batch 2 projects. This is Exhibit 8 on page 16 of the report, showing that as of August 2024, most of the projects in Batches 1 and 2 have not progressed beyond the planning and scoping phase. This is the first project phase, which involves assigning a project manager and preparing initial planning documentation to set initial budget, scope, and schedule and address risks and responsibilities. All of Transportation's Batch 1 and Batch 2 projects have started, but most have not progressed beyond the planning and scoping phase. Of the 11 projects managed by Enterprise Asset Management, 9 have started and 2 are in construction or closeout. And of the 53 projects under Batches 1 and 2 for Parks and Recreation, 39 have begun and most are in construction or closeout. As of November 2024, one of the Batch 2 projects under Parks had started, but the rest have not. Exhibit 9 on page 17 of the report shows spending as of August 2024. As of August, $47 million in planned program funds have been spent across the program's 3 funding sources, less than 10% of the program's planned project funds. As of January, this number rose to $53 million in planned project funds spent. And some T-SPOS projects were not in Oracle because the funds are accrued annually and the staff allocates the funds each year in Oracle to selected projects. But some of the funds are not allocated projects because a former staff member had paused the fund allocation to reassess the batches, but this hold has since been removed. All projects managed by Enterprise Asset Management are in Oracle with allocated funds, and all funds for Parks and Recreation projects are in Oracle, but are not organized by project. They are only divided by project type, horizontal, vertical, and land acquisition. Staff in both DEEM and Parks and Recreation expressed concerns about the budgets in the strategic delivery plan being outdated and some projects becoming or likely to become underfunded. Departments have not yet established criteria with which to prioritize projects if sufficient funding issues arise. And if earlier projects incur budget overruns, the city may have to decrease the scope or cancel later projects. Exhibits 10 and 11 on pages 19 and 20 in the report show the breakdown in spending by council district. We reviewed project spending by council district using the districts that the projects fall in according to the strategic delivery plan. For projects that fall within multiple districts, we group these as multi-district. And for those that address citywide services, we group these as citywide. As shown in Exhibit 11, 45% of all spending was in districts 6, 8, and 9. As shown in Exhibit 10, the city council districts receiving the most paid and committed funds as of August 2024 have poverty rates of ranging from 6 to 9%. And the districts receiving the least spending are districts 2, 1, and 12, with poverty rates ranging from 9 to 28%. Projects in city council districts with lower poverty rates have progressed faster in terms of spending and dollars committed. And if this trend continues and departments incur cost overruns as projects progress, projects in higher poverty districts may be scoped down or canceled entirely. The strategic delivery plan provides guidelines and controls for the Moving Atlanta Forward program, including required documentation to manage budget, scope, and schedule. We tested 6 controls from the plan as shown in this exhibit, Exhibit 13, on page 23 of the report. Overall, departments are not maintaining consistent records as required by the plan. We tested a sample of 14 transportation projects in the planning and scoping or engineering and design phases. And of these 14 projects, 8 had a RACI matrix identifying responsibilities, 2 had risk registers, and 2 had project management plans. We also sampled 2 transportation projects in construction, and neither had a notice to proceed or construction daily reports. Transportation did prepare monthly schedule variance reports as required. For the DEEM projects, we sampled 8, and of these 8, 7 had completed a RACI matrix, but we were unable to locate risk registers for any projects. And the one project in construction did not have a notice to proceed. For DPR, we tested 8 projects, all of which had a RACI matrix but no risk register. All 8 projects had a project management plan, but none had a risk section completed. And 7 notices to proceed were provided, and 5 projects had construction daily reports. DEEM and DPR did not prepare monthly schedule variance reports regularly as required. DEEM had developed templates, and DPR had prepared some monthly schedule variance reports for projects outside of our sample. The Department of Parks and Recreation did not establish project level funding in Oracle. As I mentioned before, the funding for parks projects was set up in 3 tranches: the land acquisition, vertical funds, and horizontal funds. The strategic delivery plan states that to assist with tracking in Oracle, the project's funding should be set up down to the project level, and transportation and DEEM manage their project level spending directly through Oracle. Project level spending for parks is manually tracked using a spreadsheet, posing a risk for data entry and calculation errors, and we found errors in how purchase orders were charged. We also found that some purchase orders were used across several projects, further impacting the integrity of the data. If project level finances are not maintained within Oracle, monitoring project budgets and maintaining program transparency is more difficult. The program would benefit from central oversight to help ensure compliance with the strategic delivery plan. Our 2023 audit identified inconsistent processes across the 3 departments, including instances of noncompliance with the strategic plan and opportunities for improvement in program management. A centralized oversight position of the program would help to ensure consistency in use of proper documentation, financial management, and tracking of soft costs. Exhibit 14 on page 32 of the report shows the Moving Atlanta Forward dashboard. The dashboard includes project status, budget, encumbrances, paid amounts, and reporting data as required by the plan. The Department of Transportation has established some guidance for updating the dashboard, but there is no formalized process for data validation other than the program's control team validating transportation's data and running sanity checks on data provided by Parks and DEEM. We identified some accuracy errors and potential improvements. Currently, the available metric on the dashboard reflects the funds that are immediately available, reflecting that the T-SPLOST funds are not all immediately available and are accrued annually. But we believe the available metric should reflect the amount of funds originally available minus the paid and committed amounts. The dashboard does not include project level expenditures, only budgets, and the dashboard includes a chart identifying projects at risk, but there is no clear definition of when a project is reported as at risk. So our recommendations, to maintain project budgets and schedule, we recommend that this Chief Operating Officer develop decision criteria, including equity across council districts, to determine how project funding will be prioritized if funding becomes limited. Ensure that departments are completing documentation as required by the strategic delivery plan. Assist the departments in developing a system and written procedures for tracking soft costs. Designate a central oversight position, such as a program manager, to oversee the program and ensure compliance with the strategic delivery plan. Assist in developing detailed written data verification procedures to ensure the dashboard accuracy and uniformity. Ensure the program adjusts the available metric to reflect projected funds minus paid and committed amounts. Ensure that the program add project level spending information to the dashboard. And assist the departments to define a threshold that suggests a project is at risk based on cost or schedule and communicate the at-risk status on the dashboard. We also made recommendations directly to the Department of Parks and Recreation to create separate purchase orders for different Moving Atlanta Forward projects and avoid using one purchase order for multiple projects to improve financial management and transparency, and ensure that the department uses the Oracle P&G module to manage program finances at a project level when starting new projects going forward. The full report is available at our website, and we're available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I know there's probably questions, but I thought I saw a COO walk in as well. Any comments to the audit?
Sure. Good afternoon. Good morning, still morning. Mr. Chair and members of the Transportation Committee, LaShondra Burks, Chief Operating Officer, thanks for the opportunity to come to you and talk a little bit about the audit that was just presented to you. And for those of you who may have watched CDHS yesterday, I apologize because this is the same information that I gave at that committee meeting. But I also, at the beginning of that meeting on yesterday, thanked the auditing team for the work that they had done on this audit and how they had included me after I stepped into this role as a chief operating officer throughout that process. So we have had an opportunity to meet together, go through the audit together, provide additional information, and our responses are in the report that you have as well. As it relates to as you heard, 10 recommendations. 8 of them are specifically to the chief operating officer, 1 to the Department of Parks and Recreation, 1 to the Department of Transportation. And so a few highlights that I would like to give just as we think through what was presented to us today. There are many things in this audit that we have already started to work on. We have a project manager from our Chief Strategy Officer team who is now beginning to coordinate all of the meetings across the departments. We're having steering committee meetings, as well as the Moving Atlanta Forward Oversight Committee. So they are helping to coordinate those as we work to find a staff member, which we are close to identifying, who will report directly to me, and they will serve as a coordinator for Moving Atlanta Forward, as well as be the point person for our CIDs. Because what we know is that this work is across several departments, but it has tried to be managed in one department, and that really does not work. And so that is one of the recommendations that came out of the audit. I do want to speak to, we saw information around District 6, 9, and 8. I want to bring attention to those districts have very strong CIDs. And the reason that they have been able to move a little bit faster than we have is that we have transferred money to them for very specific projects that they have been able to focus on and finish. One other piece that we have done since my conversations with the audit team has been to work very closely on our management consultants. So we have since hired Jacobs, who many of you know, very well-known, Jacobs to manage our Moving Atlanta Forward project, and Atkins will continue to manage Renew Atlanta. What we have done, I have had an opportunity to meet with the Jacobs team who's assigned to us to talk about the importance of getting these projects moving forward, and excited about the team that we have in place. I know one of the things that we have was a legislation that Councilmember Juan introduced that we were going to work and come back to show where we are in the remaining Renew projects and the remaining Moving Atlanta Forward projects. So Atkins and Jacobs are working on that for us, and we hope to have something very, very soon that we can present out. I also want to talk about, if I could, just some of the projects that we have started moving forward since this audit was done. Some that have been stuck and some that we're going to move forward on a little bit faster. We have Fire Station 22, which we have a ribbon cutting scheduled for, Councilmember Hillis, for February, a groundbreaking of Fire Station 26 this Friday. We had the groundbreaking of Fire Station 30, Joseph E. Lowry Complete Streets. And while it has been a headache, we are moving forward and on the right track for Cascade Road, and just had another community meeting with Councilmember Overstreet within the last couple of weeks. And so, again, we accepted all the recommendations. We partially accepted recommendation number 6 and kind of gave why, and you heard our auditing team talk about, it's really around the T-SPLOST funds and how they come in, and you can't put it in Oracle as the money comes in, so that means you can't put the projects in. And so we partially agreed to that recommendation, but in working with the audit team, we found ways to kind of work around that we can all agree on for that recommendation. And so I just want you all to know, I mean, we were here before. I welcome these audits. I think I said before, it gives me an opportunity and the city an opportunity to figure out where we have some gaps, and how we can move forward. And I, again, want to thank the audit team and all of their work that they have done with us to get to this space. And I will take any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you, Madam COO. Team, questions for the administration or the auditor? Hit your buttons. I see Councilmember Hillis.
Thank you, Ms. Burks. Thank you, Ms. Noble. I'd actually like to start with the audit team, if you don't mind, Ms. Burks. Ms. Noble, thank you for the audit. This one and the prior years. This is, of course, the yearly annual review of these programs. Had a few questions. So and this is not particular to this audit, but when we get these audits, they're always a little old, I would say. You know, this is certainly dated just last month, but that's when it was, I guess, approved by the audit committee. So just in general, in audits, I would like to see a little more detail as to, you know, when this audit was started, how long your team took, how long it took the administration or the departments to respond, and then how long it took for the audit board to finally approve the audit, just so we know more of a timeline that we're looking at. So with that being said, do you know any of those metrics specifically, like how long it took for the administration or the departments to respond to these particular recommendations?
I don't remember specifically how long it took. I think the biggest delay here was we had it on I think we were finished in late October, but audit committee met in December, and then council had recessed. So the delay was in the production.
Understood. Thank you. So if you could just maybe moving forward, include that on like your summary sheet, some key dates. And then on the other one, I don't think it was done in this audit, but I would certainly appreciate it moving forward when you were looking at the project list and looking at specific council districts. Council districts have been reapportioned. I know, just for an example, in my district, District 9 no longer has about $20+ million in projects because of the reapportionment. Those have moved over to Chairman Amos's district, in particular the Grove Park Rec Center, which is about $16 million+, and most of the Donnelly Hollowell, if not all of the Donnelly Hollowell sidewalk repairs, which those are both direly needed, but they shouldn't be assigned to a council district they no longer belong in. And to that point, you went in looking at either spend or allocations of monies for separate districts and then compared their poverty rates. Where did you get, I guess it says the 2020 census. I just, given as diverse as my district is, I kind of have a hard time believing that District 6 has a higher poverty rate than District 9. District 9 is very diverse, not just racially, but economically. So I'm going to have to look into that. But I would caution about looking at entire districts, given, I do come from the most diverse district in the city. You should probably look more at neighborhoods because, as I just mentioned, 20 million of the monies allocated to District 9 are being spent on the Hollowell corridor in high percentage African-American neighborhoods that have at least historically high poverty rates. So that's where that money is being spent. But it kind of is giving the gist that money shouldn't be spent in the entire district. But yet we have a very diverse district with different neighborhoods that have different poverty rates. So I would maybe caution about that or kind of look at it from a different perspective. And if you're going to kind of drill down to each project where they are located. So if you had any response or anything to that.
Well, we can look into how we do that. This was our first effort at trying to assess risks to equity because the plan was intended to be equitable across the city. And we wanted to assess whether it was being implemented to retain the equity. So whether the measure we chose was, fully effective or not, we can look at how we look at it. But we are concerned about equity.
And then, this will be done again in a year. Is that something you can adjust as far as the council district reapportionment and looking at these projects, given the new district outlines?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And then going back to Ms. Burks, the first question, so, just in general, there are, haven't done a deep dive on each of them, but there are a number of recommendations that have either not been started or only partially agrees. Can you kind of go through those for us as to either why they haven't been started or why they have only been partially agreed to?
Sure. And so it kind of goes back to audit was complete. And so all of them have been started as of now. So that is a little different in today's time, because as soon as we had an opportunity to start reviewing and we submitted our responses, we began to work on all of them. So all of them have started. They're in different phases, and we will meet the deadlines as we put here as to when we estimate that they will be completed. The one where we have partially agree is on recommendation number 6, that talks to the available funds more so than anything. And so as we've talked about before, T-SPLOST funding comes in ever so often, so you can put that money in when it comes in, because it's hard to give an estimate of what it's going to be like for that particular year. And so that's one where we partially agree, but we committed to working with finance and the auditing team to see where we can make it a little bit better than what it is. But it's just one that we partially agreed on. And if you don't mind, I do want to speak a little bit to the equity piece that you mentioned before, because it came back to my remembrance when for those of you who were on council at the time, when we were working on these projects, there were a few things that we did. And one was that we made sure that every council district had at least $30 million worth of projects, some more than others, but that was the baseline, was 30 million. And when I look at it broken down by council district, we definitely met that and exceeded the 30 million in every council district. Again, some a little bit more than others based on needs, but we did have that minimum threshold of 30 million. And I think why it may look like some inequities now is what I mentioned earlier, is around some of our CIDs have been able to move projects faster than what we have as a city. But we are well on our way with Jacobs to make that change.
And you mentioned one of the partially agrees, but there's also one on 7 that also has to do with spending, about putting project level spending information in the projects dashboard.
Yes, that's one where we partially agree, but we actually think since we have done this, that we have been able to work through that one a little bit better. After meeting with the teams, all the teams together, we feel like this is one, and working with AIM and the others to be able to do that one a little bit better.
And then the next question is, so there is, I guess what they call I forgot what the name of it is, but if you spend a certain amount of money, 85% or so, within first 3 years, you get some type of rebate. I guess needless to say, as you know, many governments do not, but we would not meet that metric. I would say that's probably true. But 2, do we know how much that would have been, give or take?
I do not know. We will have to get that from finance, but we can definitely get that.
That's called the spend down rebate.
Yes.
I'm on one more question, then I'm going to defer to my colleagues for a while, but I mean, just, you know, this is not a new problem. This is not a Dickens administration problem, a Bottoms administration problem, a Reid administration problem. It's been an issue since before I was a council member, and I went to the polls back in 2015 and voted for bonds, and then went back, I think, a year or less later and voted for our first T-SPLOST. I think maybe in the Reid administration, there was probably not as much frustration because there were a lot of quick wins in that program, specific to resurfacing. A lot of those resurfacings happened within 1 to 2 years of those votes. So people saw progress being made. And then, you know, there was this that was voted on 5-ish years later. Not a lot got done during the previous Bottoms administration. A lot of that was due to COVID. And some would say some leadership issues. But, you know, we're making progress, but there is still a lot of progress to be made.
Absolutely.
And the issue that I have, you know, this is a transportation committee, so I'm not going to try not to talk much about DEEM or DPR in this committee, but when you look at batch 1 and batch 2, which is 2023 and 2024 projects, we're in 2025. Look at parks. If you add up their, for example, batch 1 projects, they have brought 97% of those projects to either construction or closeout. If you look at DOT in 2023, which is batch one, only 7 to 8% have been brought to construction or closeout, and in 2024, 5%. So the frustration continues, and again, we're seeing progress, especially in DPR and DEEM, but the frustration continues with DOT and seeing those projects brought to completion. I know that's not solely their problem. There have been some procurement issues and others, but we just want to see, but I mean, at that point, parks projects go through procurement as well. So we're hoping to see progress. Commissioner Cavanis, who I guess was not able to be here today, has been with us for 2 years. Unfortunately, do not have a capital project DC in that department, and I think that's been vacant for over 6 months now. We, during quarterly reports, and maybe even this previous audit, and one of the things that was brought up was the project managers, which there's been some hiring there, but out of 18 positions, 7 are still vacant. So going back to the timelines, have we closed that gap anymore since the completion of this audit? How many vacancies do we now have? Is it still at 7? Is it greater? Is it less?
I'm not sure how many vacancies we have, but if I can address, because these recommendations were to the chief operating officer, that's why I'm here and not those commissioners, because I want to make sure that you all hear from me and that I hear from you as it relates to these. I can tell you, when you look at the projects, they are very different though. The transportation projects are very detailed, much larger projects than some of the others. And what I also can say is what we saw in transportation was in-house teams and project managers trying to get us to a higher percentage of design, which takes quite a bit of time. Whereas, and the reason I think you will definitely see some faster movement with us having Jacobs, we will be going to more design build, which is what Parks and Recreation use. We started that when I was in Parks and Recreation. Going to a design build phase gets your projects moving a little bit faster. And so that's what you are beginning to see, that you will begin to see in the transportation projects with Jacobs. That is what they do at the airport and where they have been in other places worldwide where we have seen success. And so you will begin to see some projects move faster and better. So, but we do have, I mean, some of these complete street projects are major, whereas putting in, and not to minimize either one of the projects, but putting in a water pump system at C.T. Martin Auditorium is very different than a complete street design. And so some of those projects are smaller, whereas most of the projects in transportation are very large.
And then one thing just to address that I don't really think came up in this audit, but kind of on the procurement side, just, in conversations with people in the industry, with the departments, with, everybody, one of the things that kind of drives people away from bidding on these city projects is, I forget how many, in the hundreds of projects across this program. Like we take each project and say, oh, hey, we want you, a multi-billion-dollar company to come bid on this, $1.5 or $3 million project, where you have, we have competitors like GDOT where they're letting massive contracts. So has the administration, procurement, the departments given any thought to, combining a number of projects and say, hey, y'all come bid on all of the 2025 projects. They're going to be all in one bid package or 2 or 3 bid packages. I don't know what the magic number is, but has that been something that has been looked at to get more of these projects out the door and more contractors interested?
Absolutely, and I think that's why you will see this program being more managed from a central process through the mayor's office versus independently by each department. And so one of the things that is coming out soon is an IDIQ at a higher number. We had that bid out and had to close it recently. But so you'll begin to see things like that happen. So you have, I think one of the things that you all approved recently was contractors to do design build work for us up to $100 million versus where we were before. And so that way you can get more people who are willing and start packaging several of these projects. We're seeing it done with the fire stations. I'll give you one example. One of the things that we transitioned to was if a fire station is one level, they look this way. If there are two levels, they look this way. So now we have a design for a one-level fire station based on the land that is going on, and we have a design for a two-level fire station. And so that will bring more uniformity, so we didn't have to spend, now we don't have to spend as much time in design because we already kind of have the design. And so that's why some of the fire stations are moving a little bit faster than some of the other projects. So we're going to take all of those lessons learned for all of our projects and bring them to bear across the city.
Thank you, CO Burks. I'll defer to my colleagues right now.
You're welcome.
Thank you, colleagues. I actually hit the button too fast, and Councilmember Faroki was next.
Well, overlooking me, Byron, is much like this pie chart, which overlooks District 2. There's a little sliver in here. I thought I was District 12, but that's 12. 2 is like me and Winston, District 1, have just a little bitty bit of work that's been completed. And that reflects, in many ways, just the anxiety that I feel on a day-to-day basis with the projects in my district. And I appreciate this audit. And my first question will be for the audit committee, but Councilmember Winston, or excuse me, Hillis aptly observed that this is a City of Atlanta problem. This is stretched for decades, and it's, for me, this is a point of personal reflection. The most deflating thing about being on council is how hard it is to get things done, particularly capital projects. It's the most demoralizing aspect of this job because we will allocate funds, we'll go through community work, there'll be months, if not years, of preparation, and then there's just radio silence, whether it's stuck in procurement, whether there's some staffing problem that backs up projects within a department. And this audit reflects that frustration that I think most of us feel on a regular basis. Obviously, there's inequities in this district execution. I guess my question for you about this pie chart is, can you share with us the projects, like you double click down on each of these districts, what the projects are? And I know that's an ATL DOT question or Parks question, but obviously you looked at a pool of projects, right, to make this pie chart? Can you share that with us?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I noticed in the recommendations, I don't think I missed it, but one of the things we hear back, particularly from ATL DOT, less so from Parks, because Parks, frankly, moves faster, as the COO mentioned, than ATL DOT does. And I understand projects are a little bit apples to oranges between Parks and DOT. But did y'all come across any staffing issues as reasons for the delays we're seeing?
I don't think we looked at that in this audit. We suggested in the first audit that the difficulty in hiring program managers could have caused delays. So really, that's a better question for COO Burks. I think it's important to note, though, that some of the documents that were not available in the central repository are the kinds of things that would help assess why is this delayed. So most of the departments weren't doing risk registers, for example.
Thank you. That's the only question I have for the audit. Appreciate the work on it. If COO Burks could reappear, that'd be helpful. I just have one question there. Thank you.
I can hear better right here than I can back there. So, sorry.
I think articulating my criticism or frustration will be better informed when we get the project list. I get a sense of where things lie, understanding that sometimes a major project is a huge expenditure, which will lead to the pie chart shifting versus a bunch of smaller projects that are lower cost that may also be getting completed. But you mentioned something, Madam COO, that felt a bit off, which was that the reason that districts 6, 9, and 8 have received the most funding is because they have CIDs that have received a big chunk of funding. And yellow flag went up in my head because I have 2 of the largest CIDs in my district, Midtown and downtown, and share that with some other council members. And I know Midtown especially has received funding, maybe not under MAF, but other city funding approaches. I'm just curious if you could just explain that a little bit more, because it didn't seem right for me, because between downtown and Midtown, two major CIDs that sit in District 2 primarily, but a couple other districts as well, and why that may not be reflected here, or, yeah.
And I think if you look at the projects between the two, so we work very closely with ADID, because I've been in some of those meetings with them as well, and the projects that they are taking on that are within their boundaries. Those are big projects. Some of them have required a lot of community engagement, thoughts about making some streets one way, they're now two ways. So they require a lot more engagement. They require a lot more studying because they are major changes. And one of the things that we talked about, I think when we were even doing the $120 million bond for downtown paving, is that some of the big projects were not going to be ready, especially for downtown, based on the community engagement and still some of the work that ADID has to do. A lot of those, if we had started them now, they would not be ready by 2026. And so the thought was allow them to continue to have the community engagement with businesses and all the downtown hotels and everyone on some of the projects that they currently have, and while we do the paving. So that is one of the reasons you probably are seeing that with ADID.
Thank you. I'll have more specific questions in the days and weeks ahead once we get some of the project list. Thank you. One last question for the audit team. On the project list that you looked at, it includes both the Moving Atlanta T-Splosh projects as well as the council district discretionary projects, is that right? Or just the Moving Atlanta Forward T-Splosh project?
No, it also includes the discretionary.
Okay, yeah, that would be helpful to see. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I yield my time.
Okay.
Add one thing on that one. If I can, council member, we don't have discretionary projects for every council member. And so in some instances, it may not show the project, but it'll still show the funding. And so one of the things that we have talked about doing, some have and some have not. And so you may not see that equitably across on the project list for discretionary funding, because some council members are still working on their projects.
Okay.
So I want to add that as well.
That's helpful, but for me, I know I submitted my
I know you
discretionary list
did, but
years ago.
I just,
and so
when you talk about,
Yeah,
does a project list includes everyone's discretionary funding? It does not.
Yeah, I'm selfish, I'm interested in whether mine were included in that. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Okay, back on track. Vice Chair Carly Overstreet.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a couple questions for you. So y'all, well, actually, I also want to thank the audit department. I appreciate this. I appreciate all of your audits, though. I mean, it's so important to know where you are. I don't always like it, but it just is so important that we, keep the information top of mind, all of it, good, bad, ugly, all of it. So I'm thankful for the work that you all have been doing. And I actually have an idea for another audit, but that was born out of this. But I'm going to talk to you later about that offline. I just don't want to forget to tell you that. But the one thing that stuck out to me that has given me angst since 2018, since I came on council, was the portion of the presentation when it was stated that if we do not do these projects now, then other projects are going to fall off the list. And we've seen that happen, and we're at a project list now that shows that we didn't do them fast enough, so many fell off. And I would hate for us to whittle down the list again. One thing we know for sure is that our funding is not static. So the longer it takes us to complete these projects, the more the cost will be, and the different, the scopes will change, the projects will fall off, and we just don't want that anymore. I am sure that my pie isn't small, because it is a place where we are so behind in so many things that we really did need quite a bit done, and that a couple of the projects are just massive projects. So it's not like this long list of amazing projects that are happening all over. It's a couple big ones, and so much so that it has taken years. Like now we're on year 7. This might be year 8, actually, of actually delivering a project. So where's my question? My question is, are we at a place where we have a plan where we will not be dropping projects?
So,
Because that was hard to hear.
absolutely. So what I can tell you, it goes back to Councilmember Wan's legislation that we are working on, and that is one of the things that we have been driving hard on with the team from Jacobs, is looking in detail at the list, seeing where some of the costs, we did factor in some cost escalations by year. And so there's a hope that even if we do a project, it may not have a gold doorknob, it may have a silver doorknob or something like that. So what we're trying to do with Jacobs is really look at, out of all the project lists, how can we continue with all of them, even if it is slightly scaled back, not to the point where we risk it being a great project, but are there things that we can do to scale back a little bit so that we don't lose any of our projects? And so again, we're close to, now I can't say that for Renew, because we're way far out on Renew side, but at least moving Atlanta forward, we may be able to do that. But we will have a full presentation between Atkins and Jacobs on the 2 separate projects and where we are with each project that we will have ready soon to present to council.
Okay, so for example, Cascade Complete Streets was broken into 2 phases, Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 is actually Renew.
Absolutely.
So that makes it crazy old and should have been, we should have been walking on those sidewalks now, like at least a couple years ago. Phase 2 is moving Atlanta forward. I think their design was in Renew, but the actual construction is Phase 2. We know that we've promised that we would not move on to move Atlanta forward until the Renew was checked off. Looking at this audit, I'm not clear about that. Did we address that at all? Because I know that was a verbal promise, during committee. But I mean, it gives me angst to think that we would move on and leave Renew incomplete. What are your thoughts on that?
To make sure I understand the question, so we are auditing the Moving Atlanta Forward, and which includes some T-SPLOST. We weren't looking at Renew as part of that. If Renew projects are proving to be a barrier to current or proposed Moving Atlanta Forward projects, we can look into that.
So we're going to have to. And reason being is we can't forget Renew. We can't. Like, there's no way we can. We have to be able to deliver what we've promised across the board. And, in looking at this audit, I didn't see how they correlated. And that is really a huge issue for me. I want to feel confident in saying that we're delivering all of our projects. So while I appreciate us looking at moving Atlanta forward, I'm excited about the projects on my list. I want to see them all. I really do. But I certainly don't want anything jumping the line at the same time. So I just want us to keep that top of mind. Moving on, we're going to move on to the CID conversation. I've long talked about how, CIDs do make our city better. My district has 0 CIDs, none. What I don't want is for us to not be not take care of areas because they're not able to take care of themselves. So we don't want to say that, you're doing better and it's faster because they have CIDs. We've tried to have a CID in my district for years. We've had so many meetings, and it just hasn't been a thing that's been taken off. Like, it's extremely labor intensive. And I don't want my district to feel as if your projects are slow because we don't have help from CID for us. So I just want us to be mindful of that, and maybe you can speak to the importance of all of our projects.
Absolutely, Councilmember. I think when I spoke to those 3 council districts, I was speaking to what was in the audit that showed that those 3 council districts had projects that were moving along faster. And I think what you've heard me say, these recommendations, along with some things that we have put in place, separating the project manager for Renew versus moving Atlanta forward. So you have 2 different project managers so we can move simultaneously where we can. I think you've heard me talking about some of our improvements in procurement processes. So all the things that we are doing will help us move projects faster, so that the next time this audit is given, that you are seeing far more equity in completion across districts versus the call out of 3 districts.
Okay. With or without a CID?
Absolutely. We certainly hear you and we agree with you.
Okay, one last question. The recommendation priority, who comes up with that? I see medium, low. Let me see if I see it. I didn't see anything that said urgent. And I was looking. So,
Yeah,
who decides? What is that based on? Because, here's a high. Here's a high recommendation. Number 4 is a high recommendation. Service delivery. Oh, I agree with that.
So we developed a rubric to determine whether recommendations were high, medium, or low, and it depends on if it's a unit level or department level, whether it's public safety. I will send everybody all the criteria.
Okay. Okay, just wondering, because I'm sure we all have different ideas of the recommendation priority. But that's it, basically. Thank you so much for this audit. I'm always happy to know where we are on everything. And I will get with you on my new idea for a new audit. Thank you. I yield.
That's Speaker, Councilmember Lewis.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Noble. Most of my questions will go to the city auditor. And thank you so much for this audit. Thank you, Councilmember Juan, for initiating this. I needed this. I'm looking at the pie graph similar to Councilmember Faroki, and I confuse my district with yours as well, but because it's a little bit bigger, but it's not big enough, right? And so when I see the 6, 9, and 8, I started asking questions of my colleagues to see about CIDs because I was trying to see how do I grow as a council person in my district, because equity was a full part of us doing Renew, moving Atlanta forward, doing T-Splice. Equity is a key term in our city, key thing that we try to do. And so District 12, equity-wise, didn't see it. And so talking to Councilmember Juan, I asked him about his CID because I sit next to Councilmember Faroki and I'm asking him about his CID. And so he has the two of the largest CIDs in the city, and they didn't receive the funds to do this. So I went over to Councilmember Juan. I said, Councilmember Juan, did they give the money to your CID to do this? He said, no. And so now I'm confused on if it was the CID was the reason that this happened, or because the administration, what I just heard was CIDs, but Councilmember Juan said that the funding didn't go to a CID. Councilmember Faroki said he has the 2 largest CIDs. And so I'm just trying to figure out how does 12 become that? And I'm asking the auditor for that. Or I'm asking the auditor, let me change the question. If the CIDs are the reason that the 6, 9, and 8 have received the most funding,
So I will caution, it's not exactly received the most funding, it's the pace
Spent
of
the most
spending,
funding,
yes.
yeah.
I don't know, so I would have to look into the
Can
figures
you
in
do
Oracle
that?
to see.
As a new audit thing, I want to know if you could look into that in particular as well, because that was the response that we just got. I want to, because I went over to Councilmember Juan to make sure. He said no. He said it's not him. And I asked the council members to my right with the two largest. He said not the reason for him.
I can see what we can find out, but I cannot answer that question.
And can you audit that? It's similar to the audit that Councilmember Overstreet just asked. Can you look into that? My request is if you can look into that in particular so that I can see how to grow as a district, because my goal was to grow on that pie chart. I wanted to grow on that pie chart. Historically, District 12 has looked even smaller on that pie chart. So this growth feels happy about not to be the smallest in the city, but I wish that if equity-wise would have been done, we would be larger. But the curveball was that the CID is what's actually helping the more affluent areas grow even more. And so I want to go back to my constituents and say, hey, we have to build a CID so that we can get attention and we can get projects done. Or I want to say, hey, that's not what happened, and we have to do something else to get more attention. So if you can look into that.
I can see what we can do.
Okay.
But I do want to caution that the pie chart is the spending to date. So in next year's audit, and we may change the metric a little bit or look at how we're measuring equity. I mean, I expect the pace to change just as the projects pick up.
And I'm just trying
Like
to.
COO Burks explained.
What I always tell people, I'm the choir when it comes to infrastructure projects in my district, because I walk the same sidewalks that you walk, and I've walked them for 37 years now. And so I just want to find out how to get these things done. So I think that because of this audit, in the last transportation meeting when Commissioner Solomon Cavanagh was here, I was asking him for one-pagers and updates on my projects. And what he told me to do was go back to the dashboard. While we were in that meeting, we noticed that some of the numbers on the dashboard weren't reflective of the PowerPoint that he gave us, so I didn't trust the dashboard as much. And so now reading the audit and what you said, I just want to talk about the dashboard for a second.
Okay.
So you said that the projects, half of the projects that have started are still in the planning stage. And so I'm trying to understand the dashboard. So if a project on the dashboard is started, it could just be in planning, right?
Yes.
And planning could just be a first meeting.
Yes.
And it could just be stuck there, but because it's planning, it's started.
That's correct.
Okay,
So there's the first slide, and in the report, the exhibit that shows the different steps, the planning and scoping phase. So it will show as started if there's a project manager assigned, but there may not be a whole lot else done. Or it may have a lot done.
Either or, but we wouldn't know by looking at the.
Now, you know which phase, and there are
just know it's
5
started.
phases. Yes.
And it just looks like, because I was looking at the batch at page 6, just making sure I just credit stuff in. So on page 6, it says DOT 52 project started, Dean 6, DPR 31, and batch 1. And so you would think that, just large number of 52, you would think, okay, it's a lot of stuff going on, but it could just be one meeting has happened on Cleveland Avenue sidewalk or Browns Mill sidewalk.
That's correct.
Okay, so thank you for explaining that to me, thank you for explaining that to me before I ask the questions to the administration. The next question was that has me a little scared, scared right here. Reading your stuff, half the projects have not started, still in the planning stage. If funding remains unallocated, the scope of the future projects may be impacted. And so when I combine this pie chart with these two statements, are we in jeopardy of, if funding has already been spent in citywide, because of the CIDs, according to the administration, requesting funding and spending it first, are we in jeopardy in District 12 of some of our projects not being completed because we didn't do them fast enough?
Well, so if, to the extent that funding changes, so if the budgets go up and if we need more money and some projects started and took more money, that could affect the later projects. So, I mean, that is a risk, but I can't really say how likely that is. I mean, it's our role to raise risks for the administration to mitigate. So, we are concerned that that could happen, although, starting early and addressing it early to control budget overruns will mitigate that risk.
And terminology is the same. You use the word concern, I use scared, so I'll use concerned instead of scared now. Same terminology and lingo coming up on the, so I want to make sure I use the word concerned from here on out. So I want to use the same term that you're using, concerned, but same thing. So I'm concerned about projects in District 12 not being completed because, according to this, 6, 9, and 8 have received the most funding, but not towards my council members for having CIDs. But I just want to make sure that the CID is the reason that the interest is put there and not other things. Next, every year during the budget hearings, what I always ask the Transportation Department, I've been very specific. One question I always ask, do you have the resources you need to do the job that's allocated to you? Every year they've said yes. And so right now, to see where we are, my concern is that I need to know what all projects in District 12 have started and how can we allocate more funds to it. And so in your new audit, can you please add the specific projects? Because that was my request last week to Commissioner Cavanagh. I asked for one-pagers on where we were, and he told me to go back to the dashboard. But I have concern with the dashboard based on this. So thank you, Chair, for putting me here, for allowing me to speak. But District 12 needs the equity investment that the voters voted for. They did this. They decided this. They sent me to City Hall to fight for that. And so we have to work hand in hand. Who actually is the department that defines priority, or which department in the city of Atlanta tells the Transportation Department to drop shovels in the ground? I'm because I'm 99% attendance rate when it comes to the transportation meeting. I have a 99% attendance rate when it comes to council meetings. So I'm not missing meetings. I'm not missing the work. I'm going to work. I'm just trying to make sure. I want to know who I need to be talking to get some priority in 12.
The strategic delivery plan batched the projects based on a number of factors. Some of it was shovel readiness, which might contribute to the spending in the areas with the CIDs. Some of it was need, and some of it was equity. So I think the priorities are kind of set in the batches, but they're all priority. The administration has said it is their goal to get them all done, and that's the plan.
You said need, equity, and shovel readiness.
Yes. Did I miss one, AJ? I think I got it.
So if those are the three, can you, one more request to you, is just making sure 3 branches of government, and I truly appreciate your auditing from us. Is there any kind of way you can look into it and let us know in your new audit to us? Let us know need, base, and equity-wise. Is there a dot in your, is there a box that you can create to help us understand more? Because I've requested these things from the department. I asked for one-pagers exactly on where you are. I haven't received it. This lets me know where I thought we were, this pie graph, and I didn't know 6, 9, and 8 received the most funding because of CIDs, but I'm confused because Councilmember Warren said his CID is not what's driving the factors. So I just want to make sure that I know what's going on. It seems like you're bringing it to us. Thank you again, Chairman, for allowing me to speak.
And I would like to clarify that the dashboard should have up-to-date information at the end of each month, and we have made recommendations to improve the usefulness of the information to decision makers. But the dashboard should give you the information.
I'm glad you said that, because in the last transportation meeting, we had a discussion about the dashboard, and I was going back and forth. But from reading your findings, the dashboard isn't up. From reading your findings,
well, we've made recommendations that they agree with. Okay.
And it's confusing as well, because the dashboard of them having one meeting talking about Browns Mill Road sidewalk internal could be what gets it into the planning stage, but that's all they've done. And so I would need more I need to know more, and I appreciate you for your openness and being so thorough and getting this out. That pie graph was eye-opening, but not shocking. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, before Councilmember Warren, I got some clarifying questions. Ms. Noble, you and your audit team look at existing information, correct?
Yes.
And so I know there may be some things we're asking of your department to do that you simply can't do. Please tell us that. So, and if there's a suggestion on where to get that information from, let us know that as well. Clarifying question about the CIDs. You look at existing information, and it just so happened that areas that have CIDs have been able to spend more money. That doesn't necessarily say that because a CID exists, that they got more money and was able to spend it, correct?
Correct. So I was unaware of the CID.
Right, I know
Yeah,
right,
so
right. I'm just talking about
okay.
the audit itself. When you look
Right,
at
correct.
existing
Yes,
information,
we
that
do.
came out. Okay, sound good. Council member 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to, before I even make my comments, want to clarify, the District 6 money is high because of the Cheshire Bridge emergency bridge repair that we had to pull up from year 5. It has nothing to do with the CID. And it sounds like District 9 is because of Chattahoochee Avenue, Chattahoochee Brick, sorry. So it's not, I think the CID comment was not entirely correct and was misleading. So y'all can dive into that deeper, but I have a feeling that's where the truth lies. So I want to thank you for your audit, but my questions are actually for the Madam COO. As you're walking up, I mean, I want to say I'm going to presume that you're wearing red today like I am because it is the first day of the Lunar New Year, and I'm going to try and be festive and relaxed in my comments and feedback to you in respect of that. So
Well, I will say that's why I'm wearing red.
So upon first reading of the audit, much like my colleagues, I think the sentiments that went through me were anger, embarrassment, but then more importantly, a feeling of defeat and resignation. And quite frankly, I've heard from a number of my constituents where I think we're just giving up. We've kind of just given up on the hope that we're actually going to get these projects. And I'll hopefully over time, as you have stepped into this new role and you've got new infrastructure and staffing in place and a new approach, we're going to see a hockey stick in progress, both in terms of this work as well as the previous work. And I recognize that the audit really is only on moving Atlanta forward and really focus on finance and kind of the reporting mechanisms of it. But it's hard for us not to let it creep into Renew Atlanta as well as execution. So I'm going to just kind of focus on that right now. Recommendation 4 has to do with oversight and the establishment of someone who's going to focus on this. It mentioned the Chief Strategy Officer, Peter Amon. You mentioned in your comments that he is hired or they've put into place a new project manager. Is that, or is about to? Is that correct?
So currently, the Chief Strategy Officer is helping out until this is a temporary assignment for them. And they are helping out until we hire a full-time project manager who will serve as reporting directly to the COO, serving as the Moving Atlanta Forward and the conduit between the CIDs.
I appreciate your reflection that because these projects span multiple departments, it's going to be better to have a central person directing and being accountable for that. So I'm going to ask from now on, during the transportation quarterly reports, and I assume also the ones that are given to other committees like CDHS, that you will be here for those as well to report on Moving Atlanta Forward and Renew projects, since you will now be the point person for those projects?
It will be me or the new person.
Okay. And there will be kind of rigorous reporting on project status, I would say enhanced because of both the findings of this audit as well as kind of the expectation that things are going to ramp up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, what I will say is that what you may get in some of the presentations, be it CDHS or in transportation, might be like project completions when we share sometimes the success of a completion of something. You may get that, but the detailed information around Moving Atlanta Forward overall, yes, that will still come from us.
And yeah, let's make sure we keep Renew in that because that we're going on year 10
Yes,
now.
Renew and
On Renew?
Moving Atlanta Forward.
And the reason why I ask that is that I feel like I've been talking about Monroe Drive, the Renew project, since I got into office in 2022. I also feel that last summer, we were making good progress in the first half of the year, but since then, to a certain degree, there's been radio silence. And I think Councilmember Farokhi alluded to this as well. So let's look to this new process and procedure, transparency and accountability, and reporting out to us to enhance what we share and what we report and how we're able to reflect that to the public. Second question is, you talked about the report that I requested regarding the funding status for each of those. So it's going to be very, very soon. Are we talking about, 30 days, 60 days? I mean, my expectation was that we would have had it by the end of 2024 per the legislation, but obviously that's come and gone.
Yes, so I will say I want to give Jacobs an opportunity with them coming on, getting everything through council, contract signed, and they have been on board now since beginning of winter, I would say, if that's what we want to call it, giving them an opportunity to finalize their piece. Atkins is pretty much finalized Renew, but we would like to come with both of those. So if you could give us 60 days max, I would appreciate it. I said max, I would appreciate it. Max.
The reason why I bring this up is that I suspect, I don't think the audit's that far off. I do think we are going to be in a recalibration posture yet again. I hope not. I hope not, because in my comments about the $120 million bond, and I'm going to come back to that, I said I would not support that unless I had reassurances from the administration that there would be no changes to the recalibrated list from Renew, as well as moving Atlanta forward. That if we had to, we would find alternate sources of funding. I was also assured by the CFO that that would be the case. I'm a little terrified by your analogy earlier to the gold knob, silver knob reference, that we would downsize, discount, scope in order to meet budget, not to lose projects. That was not what I agreed to. And I think that I would expect that the administration would not want to have those difficult conversations this summer ahead of November. So let's watch that clock. If we're going to have some honest, open conversations, I think the sooner we have those, the better for the public. And so, I think 60 days may be a little long because that's into.
We will do our best to do less than 60 days. I thought we will remain festive, but yes, we will do our best to stay, to come below the 60 days. We will do our best.
I will return to my festive stage.
Okay.
The $120 million bond. Are we putting these same controls, recommendations, tracking into that? Because I would hate to think that we haven't learned lessons from Renew. Seems like we're making some of the same mistakes with moving Atlanta forward, and I would hate that yet again we've added another $100+ million project list, and we're not going to learn and be better about that, especially given the tight time frame that we've kind of put on ourselves for that list.
So yes, we put those measures in place at the beginning, lesson learned for us. And so we can give updates on that as well. Arcadis, as you know, we've talked about, is managing that for us. And so putting a strong person, a strong organization at the beginning of it, I think helps as well, and taking lessons learned from Renew and from moving Atlanta forward. So yes.
Good. I would think that these audits, which are very, very good,
Absolutely.
Always give us a recipe for how we can do better going forward. And again, while that wasn't a referendum that we went to the public with, it is money that we have asked the public to trust us that we can deploy. At the end of the day, you've only been in this role, and I'll give you that for a certain period of time. And I appreciate all the changes that you and your team have made to accelerate this. I think we're just at the point now where we've got to start seeing the fruits of those labor.
Absolutely.
That, the the collective frustration you feel is not just from the last couple of months. It's really been a decade of projects that the public wants to see and deserves to have. And
Absolutely.
just look forward to kind of that next milestone about project status and funding. I look forward to the enhanced committee reports. I look forward to just more transparency in terms of where we're at, because at the end of the day, I think the public, so long as they know, they'll understand and see
Absolutely.
on the finish line. That's the best we can do for everybody. So, Mr. Chair, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councilmember Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, CO Burks. I have a comment and a question, and I'll be quick. Comment is I shared some of the concern of my colleagues with regards to the fact that we haven't fully closed out Renew Atlanta yet. I have, even from the discretionary fund for my district, there are projects that I've allocated funds for that we haven't seen completed. And I recognize the rebaselining work that we went through as a city to get us to where we are today. But the fact that I still have discretionary dollars that want to spend down and close out as quickly as possible is still alarming to me. So I definitely want to follow up with you and with the department on getting that closed out. My question is with regards to the Moving Atlanta Forward projects that we have federalized over the last couple of years. The Central Avenue Safe Streets for All grant that we alluded to earlier when we moved forward the renaming for Mayor Franklin, and then also the Lee Street Trail that we received federal funding last year for, and Councilmember Faroki's district, the Stitch received local match through the Moving Atlanta Forward package. What are we thinking with the current presidential administration with regards to the how secure are those projects, knowing that we have local match through Moving Atlanta Forward? What does that mean for the Moving Atlanta Forward sort of suite of projects when there's uncertainty in Washington? Will we need to relook at the timeline of those projects based on, and I'm just curious the impact on this audit. What does that all mean, and what should we be thinking about going forward?
So I will say yesterday that question came up as well, and we were actually in a meeting with all of our agencies and departments who have federal funding, kind of talking through and thinking through what that might look like. We are consistently having calls with bringing everybody together, Invest Atlanta, Beltline, Atlanta Housing, everyone. So in our grants department, this impacts our Section 8 dollars. It impacts a lot of things and systems that we were locked out of for the last couple of days where we couldn't put information in. So we will continue to watch that. We have a group of people who, and our lobbyists who are watching it very closely, getting us information timely. And we're in the space of the unknown right now with that in our federal dollars, but we will do everything we can. I think you saw the mayor speak out yesterday in a media statement on, we want everything for Atlanta released. And so we will continue to fight that fight as best we possibly can. We have seen some local nonprofits drop lawsuits over the last couple of days, which helped a little bit for a stay last night. But even after that stay last night, we still could not get into the systems. So we will just continue to watch it as it comes, and we will be able to, we can update you all as best as we can, but it seems to change every hour, to be honest. But we will continue to watch it, continue to fight, and be able to update council as best we can.
Thank you. And worst case scenario, if we're not able to unlock those federal dollars that we're owed, that we're still on the hook for completing the project. And so we'll love to, obviously not today because we're still reacting in real time, but as soon as y'all can, give us y'all's thoughts, y'all's plan around executing to the best of our ability. Even if we're not able to get those federal dollars to fully expand those projects, is there an option B or option C that is entirely just the local match that we originally had allocated as per the initial Moving Atlanta Forward legislation, so we can communicate with our constituents, if Washington doesn't act in the way it's supposed to, what can they expect as far as the status of that project towards the end. So with that, Mr. Chair, I yield.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. Next speaker, Councilmember Lewis.
And thank you. With Washington slowing down stuff, I want to make sure that the stuff in my district isn't slowed down, and making sure that things are actually happening. My grievance, my issue, I think has been since I got on council. Same thing is just making sure that things happen in District 12. My issue is that the commissioner last week told me to make sure I focus on the dashboard, but in the findings overview, one of the biggest things that they talked about was improvements to the program dashboards are needed to increase its usefulness to stakeholders. And so if there's any kind of way we can improve the dashboard to make sure that the stakeholders are actually able to use it, understand it, and because the word I used was scared, same term is concerned. I meant to use like concern. We've heard the word terrified by council members in here today as well. And so concerned, not terrified, concerned that projects are in 6, 9, and 8 are happening. According to you, you said it was the CID a little earlier was the reason why, but I talked to the 2 council members and he said, Councilmember Juan said that it's not a CID, and Councilmember Hillis also said that it's not a CID. So that's 6 and 9 both saying that it's not the CID. I'll talk to Councilmember Mary Norwood to see if it was the CID, which actually is getting things done in her area, because I want to be like them. I wanted to say 6, 9, 8, and 12, if possible. And so if it's not
to say 1 through 12. So that's our goal. Our goal is 1 through 12.
I just want to be added to the list.
Absolutely.
Whatever I got to do to be added to this list, because it's not the CID according to them. So if you can give me the same recommendation, or if you can look into it, because I think when you look now, you're going to see it's not the CID. Can you tell me what it is that they're doing to be on this list and what I have to do to be on this list for next year? And that's just a task, a question if you can go look at, and only because you mentioned CID, and I didn't ask any questions of administration earlier, I was just listening, but when you said that the CIDs were the reason that things are happening, and I went and talked to the council members, they both went on record on TV to say that that's not the reason. And so whatever, I want to know what can I do to be there without a CID?
So I do remember a couple pieces of legislation that we have approved as a council that were specific for providing money to CIDs.
Chattahoochee today.
Yeah,
Yes.
I remember for Norwood, for sure. She actually came to talk to me about it beforehand so that the legislation would, be understood. And I do remember something for 9. I think that what they're saying is that it wasn't like the
Massive
total
projects.
reason why.
It wasn't massive projects.
Correct. So
the
I
CIDs
do remember legislation, like we as a body approved a
That's right.
couple.
So we do have a couple of projects that are moving through CID, but I think of what you also heard from Councilmember Juan is when you look at the cost of Cheshire Bridge, and so that's going to elevate you as if, it's not the number of projects, what they were looking at, it was the amount of money. And so I think Councilmember Overstreet said it as well. She doesn't have a lot of projects, but the few projects she has have heavy costs in them. And so as one project gets done in Council District 11, it could go above others, but it's one project, right? And so I think we will continue to work for 1 through 12. But I think we need to look at the number of projects and the funding associated with it and not just the cost.
Thank you, Councilmember. According to the council members, once again, the CID was small. That was not even close to the reason they're on this list, because they were specific in saying City Council member District 6, 9, and 8 have received the most funding. And so my question was, since it's not the CID, because our COO actually said the CID was the reason that they had more spending in that area. Since it's not the CID, what can I do to get there? And the reason why I'm asking these questions is because yesterday I had an email, and I can forward it to, I can forward it to whoever needs to see it. I was looking at the Moving Atlanta, hi, Councilmember Lewis. I was looking at the Moving Atlanta Forward audit and was disturbed to see the low level of spending in District 12. While there was a small amount of funds originally allocated to our district in the program's budget, it was even more disappointing to see that only a small percentage of the small budget amount was spent. What are you planning on doing going forward to gain more infrastructure and other funds for District 12? As one of your constituents, I really hope that we will see District 12 not only featured more prominently in spending plans, but also that there will be adequate follow through to ensure that plans are followed out. That's the email I received, and the email right before that, the city recently held its Moving Atlanta Forward infrastructure program audited, and the results are not pretty. The Moving Atlanta Forward initiative had spent only $47 million, or 7% of the planned project funds since the program launched in 2023. Affluent areas, including Northeast Atlanta and Buckhead, saw more spending, while districts with higher poverty rates saw disproportionately less. District 12 had 6% of the project funds, or just over $24 million, budgeted for our district, but only $1.1 million of those were spent by August 2024. I invite you to join me in expressing dissatisfaction and confusion to Councilmember Lewis. These are emails that were sent to me in the past 24 hours. So my questions are based upon the constituents in my district who are also reading these audits, and they see it. And I just want to be, our COO said today that the CIDs were the reason that these council districts were on that list, and the council members said that's not the reason. And so I just want to be on the list. So I thank you, and I'm fighting for my district. Thank you again.
Thank you, Councilmember Hillis.
Yeah, I wanted to speak about, well, one thing, but first just to clear up the CID in District 9. I mean, yes, there have been projects awarded recently, but this audit doesn't look at today or last week or even the last few months. I mean, this is back in the fall. And so the only $10 million that is awarded in this audit was for a land acquisition, which is, I mean, that's happens like that. That's not something that requires a lot of planning and design and all that, to purchase a piece of historically important land in District 9. But my kind of picking up where Councilmember Juan and Councilmember Lewis touched on a little bit, but it's one of the biggest issues that leads to frustration is, we're getting all these emails from constituents. I represent 25, 30 plus neighborhoods, 5 CIDs, or not CIDs, 5 MPUs. And just the absence of information out there, I'm not able to communicate to them. I mean, my response right now is like, I don't know. And I'll send an email to ATO DOT and try to get an update on, Project X, Project Y, et cetera. But I would love to not be able to have to send those emails and, tie up staff and ATO DOT, if I could just go to a dashboard, a reliable dashboard, because when he was here, Councilmember Juan, we're looking at these dashboards. I mean, the one on the DOT website doesn't even give you project names. There's no dates. Some of them don't even have spending amounts on them. And then I've dug down further into the city's map dashboard that's outside of the ATO DOT website, and you get a little more information, but it's not even up to date and accurate. And it's kind of shown on this audit. I mean, if you go to the ATO DOT dashboard, you get some not up to date financial information, but it won't even tell you the project name or the dates. And then in the audit where they show the DEEM, it's got scoping start dates, design start dates, construction start dates, construction finish dates. So, I mean, if we can make it a priority to update the dashboards, I think it'll be a lot more comforting to us and our constituents just to get that information as to when these things are, because unless people see construction equipment outside on their street, to them, nothing started yet.
Right.
That's not the case, but we need to be able to point them to a resource that is reliable and up to date that can give them the information that they need and to us. So if we could just work on getting that dashboard up to date, that would be a big gap filled.
Absolutely. We are committed to it. But I would be remiss if I didn't go back. I want to give a point of clarity on one piece. But thank you for that, Councilmember Hillis and Hurd. One of the things I talked about was that every district, based on the projects, when we worked on this, a minimum of $30 million for each district. For Council District 12, it's $54.9 million. And so I mean, I would be remiss for us to leave here today. Now, where we are on the projects is a different thing. But where we are in a commitment is this $54.9 million. So I want to make sure, and that is the second highest of the 12 districts. So as we talk about where the funding is, I would beg to differ with you on saying that it's 35 or 40 million, as you stated. It is 54.9. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis.
And I was speaking to the number that's on this paper, on the current budgeting oracle. So once again, the dashboard is not matching up with the numbers that you said. So
Right. But that is the spend amount.
Okay.
That is not the allocated
Yep,
amount. So you'll see. Right.
Yep.
And then for the T-Splosh projects, I think we also explained that those go in annually because we have to wait for the funding to come in to upload those. But I wanted to be clear, you read the email, so I just wanted to be clear if that helps you respond to your resident, your constituent, that it is more than a $35 million commitment from the city on, because what they voted for was the 54.9 for District 12.
Yep, and that was an email from a constituent. Once again, I think equity, intention,
Absolutely.
and we voted on the right things to make sure it happened. I think delivery is what I'm talking about. I think one of the questions I asked up front was, hey, if a person has had one meeting, one discussion about this, is it in the planning stage? Is it started? And we just want to see the shovels go on the ground. I think District 12 has been left behind so long, which is why I ran for this seat, to run for the seat. I grew up in 37 years spent in that area. So the 54 million and second most in the city is due. We overdue. It was,
Absolutely.
Thank you for getting that done. The goal now is to make sure that all the engineers and that the folks that are supposed to put shovels in the ground actually put them in the ground, because right now when I ride around, I see a lot of different, not city departments, a lot of different companies. We see MARTA, we see Georgia Power, we see a lot of folks working, but my goal is to see, when I'm gonna see some of these ATL DOT people or some of those folks tearing up some of my roads so they can fix them. And so my goal is to see that.
Yes, yes.
Thank you again.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no more speakers, I'll make a motion to accept and file this.
Second.
Motion has been made and second. Please open the vote.
Mr. Chair, can you repeat the seconder? Vote is open. Vote is closed. 6 yeas, 0 nays. Item is accepted and filed. Mr. Chair, this concludes our legislative items for today.
Thank you. As we close out, it's a very rare occasion. We have 2 snow events in the city of Atlanta. But once again, I'd like to thank our airport and our ADOT Atlanta Department of Transportation for being able to close the city and open the city. We did it efficiently and effectively and kept everyone safe. Once again, all the problems you hear about at the airport is not airport operations related. It's to our people that we're helping, our airlines and the rental car companies. I just seen didn't have any cars. That is still not airport operator related. So let me put that out there as well. So thank you to the men and women of ADOT. Thank you to the men and women of the airport, and also to MARTA. I see their representative here as well. They had suspended service, but they kept the train going, kept Atlanta moving. Thank you. Hope it don't snow again. Happy days and sunshine. Thank you. We are adjourned. Have a good day.
No, it's not.
I'm laying there and all I'm hearing is Hartsfield Jackson don't have rental cars. I'm like, we not in the rental car business.